Hello YouTube and welcome to the next routes learning video. On today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Aerosoft Mosel Valley route, which was released on Steam by DTG a couple of months ago. I won't actually be driving along the main route, which is between Koblenz and Trier, but instead I'm going to be driving along a very scenic diesel-only branch, which I found around halfway along the route. We will be starting the journey at Bullay station, before turning off the main line around 2 kilometers from here onto the branch line. Calling at Reil and Koevenig stations along the way, we will then finally be arriving at Traban Trarbach, which is the terminus of the branch. I would just like to apologise at this point if I get any of the pronunciations wrong. Unfortunately, I haven't actually been able to look them up online to get the correct pronunciations for the place names along this route. The total distance for the journey is around 13.1 kilometers. The scenario which I'm using for this video comes with the route and is simply called RB94. After arrival at Traban Trarbach, I will then be changing ends to drive the return journey back to Bullay, giving a total distance of around 26.2 to 26.3 kilometers overall, which is around 16 miles. Our traction for the journey is the Deutsche Bahn BR628 and 928 diesel multiple unit. There are several variants of the BR628, but the technical information is broadly the same. The unit is formed of one powered coach and one unpowered trailer. On the way to Traban Trarbach, I will be driving from the unpowered end, and you'll notice that you can't really hear the engine from that end of the train. On the return part of the journey back to Bullay, I will be driving from the powered end, at which point you'll be able to clearly hear the engine. The BR628s entered service between 1986 and 1996, with a total of 304 of these units produced. The length of each unit is 46.15 metres, with a total weight of 42 metric tonnes. They have a maximum speed of 120 km per hour, which is around 75 miles per hour, and a maximum power output of 485 kilowatts, or 650 horsepower. These units have been fitted with both CIFA and PZB safety systems, but unfortunately they haven't been implemented on this train within Train Simulator. Once in the cab of the BR628, there's just a couple of things that I need to do to set up the train ready for departure. Firstly, I'm going to put the reversing handle into the forward position, so you can see the reversing handle there just to the left of the power handle. If I press the W key, that's now in forward. After this, I'm now going to turn on the headlights with the H key, and also flip the instrument light switch, which is just to the left of the power handle there. So if I just click on that, the instrument lights have now come on so we can see them more clearly, particularly in the tunnel which we're going to be travelling through not far out of Bullay station. Now let's just have a quick look at the cab controls here. So we've got the throttle in front of us, which comes with a total of 7 notches or steps of power. Notch 7 isn't actually going to be used that much on the journey today, as for the most part we're going to be going between idle and notch 1 of power to try and maintain a steady speed. Now if we continue to look at the dashboard, you can see in front of us here that there is a clock, and then just to the right of that we have the speedometer, which is measured in kilometers per hour. As already mentioned, the maximum speed for this train is 120 km per hour, but that being said, the maximum speed we're going to be able to get to on this journey today is around 90 km per hour, with the majority of the journey having a maximum speed limit of 60 km per hour, which is around 37 miles per hour. Now if we continue to look to the right of the cab, you can now see the brake gauges in front of us here. The most important gauge that we're interested in is the smallest one on the right hand side, which is the brake cylinder pressure gauge. If I now release the brakes a bit, you'll then see that the needle will start to fall. So I've just moved the brake handle all of the way to the released position, and you can actually see that the yellow needle on the left hand gauge there is climbing first. Now you can see the red needle on the brake cylinder pressure gauge is falling. When that's pointing at 0, that means that the brakes are fully released, and the higher that needle is pointing, then the harder the brakes are applied. If we now move over to the brake handle just here, the brake handle has 6 notches or graduations before the emergency setting. I'm going to try and not go above notch 3 braking on this unit, as it's not really necessary and it helps to give a smoother ride for the passengers. One thing to note about the brakes on this train is how slow they actually release. So if you've got the brakes on quite hard, like I've just moved the handle up there, and I move it to the release position, you can see just how slowly the red needle is falling in the top of the screen there on the brake cylinder pressure gauge. So that's one important thing to bear in mind when slowing down for speed limits, because if you brake too hard, you may find yourself slowing down more than you thought due to the slow speed of the brakes releasing. One final control to look at here is the horn, which is just in front of us. If I now press the spacebar key, you will hear the horn sound. It's a rather high-pitched and possibly slightly pathetic sounding horn on this unit. So now we've had a look around the cab, let's just take a look at a couple more shots around Bullay station before departing towards Traban Trarbach. Departing Bullay, the starting speed limit is 40 km per hour, and we've got around 4.2 km to go to our first stop, which is Reil. So I am now in full power, accelerating up towards 40 km per hour, and now we're doing 35. I'm just bringing the power back, just to gradually now bring our speed up to 40, and then once we've reached 40, I'm now just going to idle the power for a moment. The speed limit is actually going up to 80 km per hour, now we're on the main line, and so just as we pass the signal on the track to the right there, I'm now going to start accelerating up towards the 80 km per hour speed limit, which is around 50 miles per hour. In a moment we're going to be passing over a large bridge and then entering a tunnel, and just before the tunnel the line speed will then be going up to 90 km per hour, which is just over 55 miles per hour. We're now passing the 90 km per hour speedboard just before entering the tunnel here, so I'm going to stay in full power to accelerate towards 90, and then as we get to the other end of this tunnel, at that point I am then going to cut the power to idle, as we've then got a speed limit coming up soon. We're going to have a distance signal just after this tunnel warning us of an upcoming 40 km per hour speed limit, so the distance signal is now visible. And the distance signal is around 1.5 kilometers or 1 mile from the 40 km per hour speed limit itself. So what I'm looking out for now is kilometer post 61. You can actually see the kilometer posts on the overhead catenary here. So just passing 60.8 now, and just after kilometer post 61, which will be the next one, and then going to start applying the brakes for the upcoming 40 speed limit. So we've just passed 61 now, we've ended the left curve there, and now braking up to step 2, which should bring our speed down quite nicely. You can now see the main signal ahead to which the 40 km per hour speed restriction applies, and we've actually got this speed restriction because at this point we're then going to be turning off the main line and crossing a junction onto the branch line. I just reduced the braking slightly for a moment there as I felt we were slowing down slightly too early. We're now down to 40 and the brakes are fully released in time for passing the signal here with the 40 km per hour speed restriction. Slow down a bit too much, down to 35, so I've just given it a couple of notches of power to bring our speed slowly back up towards 40. I'd just like to apologise for the random lag patches here. Unfortunately on this route I get great performance when driving when I'm not recording, but when recording I do seem to get random patches of lag that just seem to come out of nowhere. I'm assuming it's the recording software I use, but I'm not 100% certain. It is slightly annoying when it happens, so yeah, I do apologise for that. So we're now crossing the point to the left onto the single track diesel only branch line, and in a moment the speed limit will be going back up to 60 km per hour. at the 60 km/h speed post just here. We've got around 1.2 kilometers or 3/4 of a mile to go to our stop, and I can accelerate towards 60 once we've entered this right hand curve here, which we've now entered. So I'm now going into full power to bring our speed up towards 60. What I'm looking out for next is a flashing white light. I'm not actually sure what that means, but once we reach the flashing white light, we've then got 0.6 kilometers to go to our stop. So I'm going to idle the power and allow the train to coast at that point. And then I'm going to apply the brakes lightly on the next right-hand curve. Just allow the speed just to slip up to 61 or 62 for a moment there, so I had to apply the brakes. Brought our speed back down to 55. Now we're just past the flashing white light, so what I'm looking out for next is the next right-hand curve. And as I've already said, at that point, I'm then going to start applying the brakes for our stop. So I'm now in notch 2 of braking, which is bringing our speed down very gently and very nicely. The station will be coming up just around this left-hand curve here. I don't really want to enter the platform at faster than around 30 km/h, which is around 20 miles per hour, just because the platform isn't particularly long here. I'm aiming to stop at the H sign, which is at the end of the platform. Coming in slightly too slowly, so I've just released the brakes momentarily, and now I'm increasing them once again. Just going to gradually fan the brakes to bring us to a gentle stop. And we should now be stopping in about the right place. Departing Reil, the starting speed limit is 60 km/h, and we've got around 5.2 kilometers, which is around 3¼ miles to go to our next stop, which is Koevenig. So I'm now in full power once again, accelerating up towards 60 km/h. And what I'm looking out for along here now is kilometer post 2.2, so we've just passed kilometer post 1.6. Once we reach kilometer post 2.2, we're then going to be going downhill for around 2.5 kilometers, and at that point I'm going to be able to just idle the power and allow the train to coast, and the train will gain speed very slowly, so I do need to keep an eye on that and use the brakes if necessary to control the speed, but for the most part I should just be able to allow the train to coast. So I've just idled the power now at 60 km/h. The speed is currently falling off slightly, and now we've just entered the downward gradient just before kilometer post 2.2 here. And so now you can see we're coasting at around 58 km/h. I just need to keep an eye on that until we get to kilometer post 5.6. Now once we get to that, then we should be leveled out at that point, and I can then apply a bit of power so that we don't lose too much speed. I would just like to take the opportunity at this point to apologise once again for taking so long between making videos. I know it's been 2.5 weeks since the last video that I was able to make. It's just since going back to university on the 1st of February and starting the new term, I've been really quite busy, and it's been really difficult to find the time to commit to make some new videos. I have tried to make a couple of other videos before this one. This one had been planned for a while, but I wanted to get some others done first, such as the West Highland Line extension, and indeed also a West Coast Main Line North run in a Class 90 between Glasgow Central and Carlisle. And unfortunately I was experiencing some technical issues with Train Simulator itself, which caused delays in doing those videos, and so the hours I spent trying to make them right now feel a little bit wasted. So I decided to move on to this video for now, and I can say that I am planning the next video to be on the brand new Feather River Canyon route, which is an American route, and I just think it looks really stunning. I was able to get a copy of that today, so I'm hoping to make a video on that at the weekend if possible. I also still haven't forgotten the Class 90 train guide. It's just taking a while to find the time to commit to actually making that video. I am getting more settled in at uni now for this term, so I'm hoping that over the next few weeks I can go back to making at least one video a week, which is always my aim during term time, to just try and get one video done a week. And then of course when there's holidays or when the term ends, then I'm aiming to do a lot more videos than that. And certainly from May, once university is finished, I'm not back until September, and from that point I'm then hoping to get as many videos up as I can in the summer before heading back to university for year 2 in September. I realised that a moment ago I said it's kilometre post 5.6 where the gradient level's out. That was actually incorrect. What I'm looking for here is kilometre post 4.8, and which is the next one, and we should be levelling out on the gradient around there, at which point I need to go between idle and notch 1 of power to try and maintain the speed. Actually at kilometre post 5.6, at that point we've then got just over a kilometre to go to our stop. So we're now just losing a little bit of speed. I've gone into notch 1 of power to bring our speed up slightly, just so we don't lose too much as we drop to 55. We're now getting up towards 60, so in a moment I'm going to idle the power once again. We're now at a steady 60, so I've idled the power once again to allow the train to coast. Just dropped to 55 once again, so I've just given us a little bit of power to bring our speed back up once again. I'm actually going to be idling the power completely at kilometre post 6.2, and then I'm going to be applying the brakes for our stop at around kilometre post 6.4. And the station at Koevenig is slightly unusual in that there's 2 platforms. We need to stop at the second platform, which is the furthest one. And then on the return part of the journey, it's going to be going the other way, where we will need to stop once again at the second platform, which will be the first platform in this direction. I'll be able to explain it better in a moment as you see it. So I've now idled the power. We're at kilometre post 6.2. I'm now looking out for kilometre post 6.4, which should be coming up in a moment. I believe we've just passed that now, and I'm now going to start applying the brakes for our stop on this right-hand curve here. You can now see the first platform coming up, and we're looking at the second platform. You can actually see there's a gap between them. I've just had to apply the brakes a bit harder than I originally planned, as I realised I wasn't going to be slowing down quite as quickly as I thought. Brought the speed down quite nicely here, and I'm aiming to stop once again at the H sign at the end of the platform here. We should now be stopped in about the right place. Departing Koevenig, the starting speed limit is 60 km per hour, and we've got around 3.7 kilometers to go to the next and final stop in this direction, which is Traban Trarbach station. Once again, as we get towards 60 km per hour, I'm then going to go between idle and notch 1 of power to maintain the speed. Just cutting the power back now, we're now in idle. I'm just going to wait until the speed drops towards 55 km per hour before then increasing the power once again to bring us back up towards 60. So I'm now back in notch 1 of power. Now we're down to 55 km per hour. The next landmark I'm looking out for is actually kilometre post 8.6. Once we reach kilometre post 8.6, we've then got 2 kilometres to go to our stop. So we're now passing kilometre post 8.6 with 2 kilometres to go. What I'm looking out for next is a 20 km/h warning board. Once we reach this warning board, apologies for the lag there, that's quite bad, I'm not quite sure again what was triggering that. As I was saying, once we reach the 20 km/h warning board, at that point I will then be preparing to brake for the upcoming 20 speed limit. And I'm going to apply the brakes into notch 2 on the next right hand curve. We're just passing the 20 warning now, we're just entering the right hand curve. The 20 warning is 0.4 kilometres from the speed restriction itself. I've now got the brakes into step 2, which should bring our speed down about right in time for the upcoming speed limit. Just release the brakes slightly as I felt we might be slowing down just slightly too quick there. I'm now in notch 1 of braking. And the speed limit comes into force at this signal you can see just on the right hand side here with the white light. So the speed limit has now dropped to 20 just before this crossing. Just after we've crossed the point ahead, the speed limit will actually go up to 40 km/h, but there really is no point in accelerating as we are now quickly coming up on the station. And it is a dead-end station as well, so there's really no point in accelerating to any faster than 20 at this point. So I just applied a little bit of power to bring our speed back up to 20 and then idled, and I now shouldn't need any more power before we arrive at our stop. So we're now entering the station here. You can see the buffer stops coming up just ahead. I'm aiming to stop with the red ticket machine on the platform, just in the right hand side window there. And that should be about the right place to stop in relation to the buffers just ahead. And so we should now be stopped in about the right place. So I need to change to the other end now to drive back to Bullay. So we're just going to take a look at a couple of shots of the train here at Traban Trarbach station, and then I'm going to change ends and prepare for departure back towards Bullay. Departing Traban Trarbach, the starting speed limit is technically 40 km/h, but it is soon dropping to 20 km/h on the point just ahead. So at this point I don't actually see any point in accelerating above 20 km/h. So now that we've reached 20, I've idled the power to allow the train to coast. You will notice now that as I have changed ends, you can now hear the diesel engine in this end of the train, which I actually prefer to be able to hear the engine than not, so it makes a nice change in driving in this direction along the route. And so as we departed Traban Trarbach station there, of course, we had around 3.8 kilometres to go to Koevenig station, as all of the distances are the same in reverse. The speed limit is now 20 kilometres per hour, just passing the signal that we just passed as we cross over onto this point here. Once we're back onto the single track here, then the speed limit will be going up to 60 kilometres per hour, and I can accelerate towards that at the rear of the signal on the left hand side, which you can see coming up just here, which is the speed limit where the 20 restriction came into force in the opposite direction. I'm just now going straight up to full power to bring our speed up towards 60. Now that we're getting towards 60 kilometers per hour, I'm bringing the power handle back. In a moment, I'm just going to now be going between idle and notch 1 of power once again to try and maintain the speed. What I'm looking out for now is kilometer post 8, and then there will be a crossing just after kilometer post 8, and at that point we've then got 0.8 kilometers to go to our stop at Koevenig. We're now at kilometre post 8.8. So we're, at this point really we're now about 1 mile from Koevenig station. And I'm going to use kilometre post 7.2 as the breaking point for our stop. Probably see I'm still just fanning the power handle. I decided to fan it at a bit of a higher speed so that we don't fall to 55 kilometers per hour, and trying to keep us between 57 to 58 and 60. We're past kilometer post 8 now. The crossing is coming up, which is 0.8 kilometers away from our stop. And I'm looking out for kilometre post 7.2, as already mentioned, as the ideal braking point, I believe, for Koevenig station. It's past 7.4. I've now got the power in idle at this point. I don't think that we need to add any power. And we're now approaching kilometre post 7.2. You can see the closer of the two platforms at Koevenig coming up just ahead. Once again here we need to stop at the second platform rather than the first platform, so we're stopping at the opposite platform to the one that we did in the other direction. Just been using step 2 of braking here to bring our speed down gradually. We're now passing the first platform here with the crossing in the middle, and then I'm aiming to stop at the H sign on the second platform. We should now be stopped in about the right place. Departing Koevenig, the starting speed limit is 60 km per hour, and we've got around 5.2 km to go to our next stop, which is Reil. Once again, as we get towards 60, I'm now going to bring the power back and fan the power handle between idle and notch 1 to try and maintain the speed. Once we pass kilometre post 4.8, then we're going to be travelling uphill most of the way to Reil station until we get to kilometre post 2.4. So at that point I'm then going to need to go between notches 1 and 2 of power to try and maintain the speed as close to 60 km per hour as I can. I hope you've been able to see just from this short journey just how really scenic this branch line is. When I first had a look at it, I'd really like to make a video on that because I think it would really look good. And I also realised that so far I haven't actually done any journeys on the European continent in a diesel train. So I thought it would also make a nice change to be driving a diesel in Europe rather than the usual electric. That being said, I would like to cover some more diesel journeys, particularly on the Hamburg to Lübeck add-on. And in addition to that, I'd also like to do a German freight run at some point in the ER20 Eurorunner, which is a pretty cool loco. I actually saw some of them when I was at Vienna in Austria on my holiday to Hungary last month, and I have to say I really did like the look of the ER20 and the way they sound as well. So I'm quite keen to try and do a freight journey on that at some point in the not too distant future. So we've just reached kilometre post 4.8, we are now going uphill. I am currently in notch 1 of power and I'm keeping an eye on our speed. If our speed falls too much, I will then go up to notch 2. So as mentioned earlier, the next video will be an American video. I've had people requesting that I make some more American videos, particularly freight ones, as I've only made one American freight video in the past. And then after that I'm going to be back to making a few British route learning videos before heading back out to Europe and America again for some more videos. Certainly quite a few American routes left to cover, and there's a number of European routes left to cover as well, with some more in production as well, which I'm really looking forward to being able to try out. I also see that they have announced a Bristol to Cardiff route, Dovetail Games, and in addition to that, Just Trains are going to be releasing a Great Western mainline route, which goes all of the way from London Paddington through to Bristol, Cardiff Central and Exeter. That's going to be quite a mammoth route, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think there's some great video and scenario potential there. So I'll certainly be making some videos between London Cardiff, London Oxford, London Bristol and so on. And also the return part to the Bristol to Exeter video, which I did ages ago on a much more updated route, would be really nice, because I do think that the original Bristol to Exeter route for Train Simulator is really looking quite dated now. I did lose a little bit of speed there. I didn't have enough power on, so the speed fell towards 55, so I gave us a bit of a power boost there to bring us back up towards 60. The gradient will be levelling out in a moment at around kilometre post 2.4. Just gone slightly over the speed limit there. I went up to around 61 kilometres per hour, so I've just cut the power back to allow us to slow down a bit. The gradient here is now levelling out. What I'm looking out for along here is actually kilometre post 1.8. I'm going to be applying the brakes for Reil station on the right hand curve after kilometre post 1.8. Just passing kilometre post 1.8 now. I've got the power in idle. I'm going to start applying the brakes at this point. In fact, I think I can just see Reil Station coming up in the distance there. So I'm just bringing our speed down nicely, ready for the stop. I'm going to be aiming to stop at the H sign, which is at the end of the platform. I think that's how they do it in Germany, that you're just supposed to stop at the H sign, but I'm never sure, because if in the other direction you stop at this end of the platform, then why wouldn't you stop at this end of the platform in this direction? I always found that slightly confusing about stopping points on stations in Germany. Apply the brakes slightly harder than usual there, just to try and bring us to a stop in the right place. Looks like we're just going to slightly overshoot the stopping point. Hopefully I didn't, we'll soon see when I get outside. Departing Reil, the starting speed limit is 60 km per hour, and we've got around 4.1 kilometers to go to the next and final stop, which is Bullay. And as you may have noticed from the external shot I just showed you there, I actually didn't overshoot at the station. I just ended up having to brake a bit harder than I usually would, so I'm very glad about that. I do find it sometimes difficult to judge the stopping point from the driver's cab, because you actually look closer from the cab than what you actually are when you look outside. So we've just got a distance signal coming up here warning us of an upcoming 40 km per hour speed limit. This distance signal is around 0.7 km from the main signal. I've idled the power at this point. We're just about to go above 60 km per hour there, so I've just applied the brakes momentarily to ensure that I didn't. You can now see the main signal coming up just ahead, where the 40 speed restriction comes into force. So I've now got the brakes on to slow us down gradually for the upcoming 40 speed restriction, which is again for crossing the junction back onto the main line, which we turned off earlier. Slowed down just slightly too early there, not too bad though, and you can see we're just about to pass the signal with the 40 km per hour or 25 mile per hour speed limit. Now that we're down to 40 km per hour passing this signal, I'm just going to allow the train to coast for a moment. We're actually going to start going downhill shortly after joining the main line, so I do need to bear that in mind and just keep an eye on our speed to make sure the train doesn't run away with us. The speed limit will actually be going up to 90 km per hour shortly after rejoining the main line, just after we pass a point to the left hand side. Actually now see, you can physically see the gradient change as we're about to start going downhill, so I've just got to keep an eye on our speed to make sure that I don't end up exceeding 40 before I'm permitted to do so. But just after we pass this next point, which you can see on the left now, looks like I've timed it just about right. Yep, I can now accelerate up towards 90 km per hour. I'm going straight up to full power at this point to bring our speed up, and then I'm going to idle the power around 80 km per hour. And that should be okay. At that point, the train will then gradually coast up towards 90. So now we're doing just over 80 km per hour. I've just idled the power at this point. We've got a distance signal here with a speed warning on it. The distance signal that we are passing is 1.4 kilometers from the main signal. Now going to apply the brakes lightly shortly after leaving this tunnel to bring our speed down. I'm actually expecting a red signal just outside of Bullay station. It's one that I'm going to have to stop at and then press tab to request permission to pass it. The speed limit dropped to 80 km per hour on this bridge, as you may have just noticed. And you can now see the distance signal coming up just ahead, which has the double yellow light on it, indicating that I need to expect a red signal just outside Bullay station. I can also expect a 40 km per hour speed limit shortly after that signal. When I was doing the practice run, the shunt signal that you can see just ahead was actually displaying a red aspect. It appears that today it is displaying a white light, which means that I am cleared straight into the platform here at Bullay. So I've just released the brakes at this point. I'm just going to bring our speed up slightly to around 20 to 25 km per hour, but no faster than that, as we are turning, of course, into a bay platform here, which has buffer stops at the end of the platform. And I'm aiming to stop here with the H sign in the right-hand window, which should be about the right stopping point. Just coming in gently. I've just been fanning the brakes there, and I'm just waiting for the H sign to go into the right hand window, and now we're stopping in about the right place. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really do hope that you have enjoyed it. Please don't forget that you can find me on Facebook for the latest updates, and the link to my Facebook page is in the description of this video. Once again, thank you for watching.